Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. All right, here's one for all the retail workers out there, because you know exactly how this game plays out. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. You should have taken the deal, buddy. I work at a big box retail store that does price matching. So while we do price match, there are rules. It has to be in stock, it can't be a third-party seller, has to be able to be bought without a membership, etc. I know the cheapest place and the price we can sell it for. The policy is customers have to do the research, but sometimes when I'm feeling generous, I would just tell them straight up. A customer's looking at a laptop that's usually around $3.4K before taxes. I tell him straight up I can save him $250. We'll give it for the lowest price anywhere. I tell the guy I was going to buy it before, but I don't make commission, so it doesn't matter. I can just press the correct buttons for the price match. But now this guy's trying to haggle the price, and this just changes my attitude. I'm able to sell it at the price within policy, not because what I set the price for. Him, knock off another $50, man, or throw in an accessory. You gotta help me. Me, I'm already saving you $250, and you still want to haggle over the price? Him, man, I can get it cheaper elsewhere. You really want to lose this sale? Me, no, but I'm not going to lose my job over this. Him, that's why store name's going out of business. You guys don't do anything. We are actually doing quite well, but that's besides the point. He leaves, but deep in my soul, I know he was going to come back. Customers will threaten to take their business elsewhere, then come back when they realize we're usually selling it for the cheapest, plus you get instantly versus waiting online. I tell my manager, and he already knows the deal. Lo and behold, 2 hours later, he comes back, probably trying to sweat me out while he had lunch. But I was no longer feeling generous. Me. So how much did you save? Him. They didn't have it in stock. We're the only retailer for an hour with this product, let alone cheaper. Me. So if you want the laptop, it'd be $3.4K. Him. What? You said it'd save me $250. I want you to back up your price match policy. Me. Well, sir, I'm sure I can save you that money, but you left to go save more money elsewhere before I had a chance to tell you where you can get that price match. Passive aggressiveness was so satisfying. And our policy clearly states you have to do your own research. Him. Get me your manager. At this point, my manager knew the game this guy was playing and wasn't having none of that crap. He backed me up and told the customer if he can show us the lower price, we'd match it for him. We aren't in the business of selling lower for no reason. The customer could not find the website to save that much money and complained, but eventually left. He came back that night to buy it, only saving $100. The fact that he still bought the laptop at a worse price than what you originally offered just makes it all the sweeter. It's always satisfying when customers think they're pulling one over on retail workers only to get absolutely shut down by their own arrogance. And our second story. The fake handicap spot and the neighbors from hell. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right in the city where parking's a constant struggle. My apartment's on a small, hidden, one-way side street, which makes it a little quieter than the main roads. My girlfriend and I were excited to move in, and at first things seemed pretty good. When we first arrived, we noticed a handicap sign pinned to a lamppost near our building. Naturally, we respected it, assuming it was a legitimate reserved handicap parking space. The neighbor who lived in the house directly next to it, let's call him Joe, seemed to have claimed that entire section of the street. At first, we didn't question it. If the guy was disabled and needed space, who are we to argue? But over time, things got weird. It didn't take long for us to notice that Joe was a little obsessed with the parking spot. Anytime someone parked too close to the lamppost, even if they weren't actually blocking the spot, Joe or his wife would immediately bang on the offender's door and demand that they move their car. It wasn't a polite request either. They were aggressive about it. Early on, we made the mistake of parking just a little too close. Joe came pounding on our front door and angrily demanded we move our car. We complied immediately, assuming it was just a misunderstanding. Then we noticed something strange. Every few months, the required space around Joe's so-called handicap spot seemed to get bigger and bigger. At first, it was just the space right in front of the lamppost, then it expanded by a foot, then 2, Then suddenly half the block was off limits. It wasn't just us. Other neighbors started complaining about getting yelled at for parking in areas that had previously been fine. At this point, I started having doubts about the legitimacy of this reserved space. Now, I know disabilities aren't always visible. I wasn't about to assume Joe wasn't disabled just because he didn't look disabled, but his behavior made me suspicious. For starters, he had never once used a cane, walker, or any mobility aid, and yet he would run outside to scream at people the second they parked nearby. Then there was the drunken chaos. Joe and his wife were frequently wasted, leaving piles of beer cans around their doorstep and even throwing them into the street. Just about every other night, they would get into loud, drunken screaming matches that echoed down the block. I don't know what they were fighting about. Most of it was garbled nonsense, but it always ended with doors slamming, things breaking, and one of them storming off. After watching this unfold for months, my skepticism grew. I wasn't even questioning if he was disabled. I was questioning if his handicap space was real. The moment that sealed the deal came one afternoon after yet another drunken argument between Joe and his wife. I came home from work and stopped dead in my tracks. Overnight, a large spray-painted blue handicap curb had appeared. Not just a normal-sized curb marking, this thing stretched 16 feet long. It wasn't even a real city marking. The paint job was sloppy as hell, with streaks of blue spray paint splattered onto the sidewalk. That's when I knew for sure Joe had faked the whole thing. I wasn't about to let some belligerent drunk take up half the street with a completely fake handicap spot. So I called the city. The rep I spoke to sounded very interested in my story. She pulled up permits for the area, and lo and behold, there was no record of any legally designated handicap parking space in that location. I asked if the city could send someone out to investigate, and she assured me they would. A couple of days later, a crew from the city showed up. The second they saw the horrible spray paint job, they knew it was fake. Joe must have been watching from his window, because as soon as the city workers started repainting the curb back to normal, he came running outside screaming, "What the hell are you doing? That's my handicap spot." The city workers didn't even look at him. One of them simply said, "This isn't a registered handicap space, sir." Joe was fuming. He ranted about how he needed the spot, how it had always been there, and even accused me of being a liar. But then the best part happened. One of the city workers handed Joe a citation for defacing public property. He had to pay for all the costs involved with repainting the curb. He was so furious that I thought he was going to have an aneurysm right there on the sidewalk. But I just stood on my porch watching the show. Since then, Joe hasn't bothered me once. He still glares at me whenever I park anywhere remotely near his house, but he doesn't say a word. I've even noticed that the bags of beer cans have mysteriously disappeared. Maybe that citation scared him sober. Or maybe he's just afraid of getting caught in another scam. Either way, I call that a win. I hope every time he looks at that freshly painted curb, he gets a little reminder of how badly he lost. And the fact that his beer-fueled rage has mysteriously subsided. Almost like he knows he's being watched now. That's just the icing on the karma cake. And our last story. Hydropower is not for Karen. I warned my neighbor not to mess with the generators. Now he pays me monthly for electricity. This story started over 20 years ago when I moved into a cozy mountain home in the northern U.S. I had a dream to live away from the noise, close to nature, with minimal dependence on civilization. Luckily, there was a strong mountain stream on my property, and with a bit of engineering knowledge, I set up a small hydroelectric generator, a turbine that powered my home with free, clean energy. Over the years, I upgraded the system, added stabilizers, surge protection, battery backups for outages. Everything worked like a charm. My good neighbor downstream, John, once asked if he could tap into the stream somehow. We came up with a plan together. I built a little shed on his property with batteries and an inverter to keep the noise further away from my house. He had a much bigger lot anyway. He just let me use a small part of his land. Win-win. And for 20 years, everything ran like a Swiss watch. Then John passed away. His house was bought by some guy, let's call him Brad. Or Karen. Let's go with Brad Carenson. One day, he showed up on my porch with a face like I'd personally stolen his childhood. "What's this junk in my yard? These boxes with wires. Get it out of here now." I calmly explained that this was the generator system that powered both his house and mine, for free. Brad exploded. I never gave permission for this equipment. This is private property. I'll sue. My mother-in-law's sister is a lawyer. Not joking, he actually said that. I tried explaining again that turbines power both our homes. He's been using the electricity daily without even knowing, but you know how Karens are, they don't listen. So, okay. Naturally, I was terrified of his mother-in-law's sister, the lawyer, and decided to remove everything. I'd been meaning to upgrade the system anyway. If he didn't want free stuff, well, that's his choice. I took back all the equipment, moved the shed and everything onto my land, and since there were newer models by now, I upgraded the whole system, more power than I even needed. Honestly, it was kind of fun. I love building stuff. As for Brad, the very next day I saw him step out onto his porch with the most confused look on his face. Total darkness inside. But Karens don't admit defeat easily. First, he decided to build his own hydro turbine. I think that was his original plan all along. He found a company that installs small systems, even brought in engineers. But surprise, laws had changed a lot over the years. Turns out his stretch of the stream is now officially part of a moderately sensitive ecosystem. Any interference, like concrete work, altering the stream bed, or installing machinery, requires tons of permits and expensive environmental studies, and even then, the chance of approval? Close to zero. He tried everything: consultations, legal advice, petitions. He even filed paperwork, all for nothing. Then came the cheap Chinese solar panels from eBay, but the canyon barely got enough sun to charge a toothbrush. Next came a wind turbine, but wind? What wind? In a valley surrounded by forest on three sides? The last thing I saw was him messing around with plastic bottles and tubing. I don't even know what that was supposed to be. Maybe he was trying to harness cosmic energy? And then came my favorite moment. Brad came to me humbled, eyes down. Hey, any chance you could sell me a little electricity? Just, temporarily? I almost choked trying not to laugh, but kept a straight face. Sure, Brad, but it's not free. I've got expenses, generators, batteries. We signed a contract. He now pays me $250 a month. And honestly, I get immense satisfaction from sending him a bill each month with a note. For the electricity you kicked out of your own yard. The best part? I don't even spend that money. It's going into a new project, another battery bank. If Brad ever decides to get bold again, I want to be ready. What kind of logic did this guy have to turn down a perfectly good free system? Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.